This next module, the 6 marks of emotionally healthy people, will not be the end of the discussion. Pastor James will be hand-selecting a few of you, men and women, younger and older, to continue the conversation. If you're interested in going deeper in dialogue, please sign up with Sister Janine James immediately following service.
Everyone, we have made it to the end of our discussion surrounding the 6 marks of emotionally healthy people. Over the course of this 6-week study, we have had 18 parts and components that comprise this idea of optimal emotional health in people. And we've covered a lot of ground. In the first week, we talked about how emotionally healthy people have emotional intelligence, or EI. They're aware of themselves, they're aware of others, they're aware of the environment, what is happening in the room. They're also aware of relationship management as well as self-management. Week number 2, we talked about how emotionally healthy people are self-reflective, that I have to be able to reflect on myself, and I have to be able to handle the truth about myself, no matter how unflattering that truth may seem. In the third week, we talked about how emotionally healthy people are authentic, that we are our true selves, not just a mere version of ourselves. And in the fourth week, we talked about how emotionally healthy people have a healthy sense of limitations. And if you remember, I talked about how you may have superpowers, but every superhero has some weaknesses, and those weaknesses should not be denied. They should be embraced because they are the opportunity for us to find greater depth in who we are and also get help from others who will facilitate us. Last week, we talked about how emotionally healthy people move past their past, that we cannot get stuck in the past, but we must move forward from our past and not let it define us. And I will talk more about that in this 6th week, where we will handle this idea of how emotionally healthy people have a healthy sense of possibilities. Another way of saying that is that emotionally healthy people have a healthy sense of what's next. There is something next on the horizon for you. Your best days have not already happened unless you decide that is the case. We must look forward to something in life. We must have some sense of something better that is going to happen than that which has transpired up to this point. Part of being alive is having a fresh sense of possibility. And in this first part, I want to talk about how emotionally healthy people don't allow their past experiences to hinder their future possibilities. We cannot, as emotionally healthy people, allow our past experiences, no matter how negative they have been, define our future possibilities or hinder our future possibilities. The Bible is replete with exposition and instruction about the sense of possibility that is sometimes identified as vision. And vision is not just the ability to see. Vision goes far beyond that. It is the ability to see a brighter future, a different scenario than that which I am living right now. It is a capacity for optimism. We cannot just be pessimistic, always expecting things to go wrong and waiting for the other shoe to drop. We can also not see the glass as half empty, but we should see it as half full. We also should not be cynical, which I believe is fear aggressive, that we're afraid, and the aggression or the anger towards our fear is expressed in cynicism. Built into all of us is a healthy sense and a capacity for optimism. And so emotionally healthy people don't allow their past experiences to harden them and to hinder their future possibilities. In the Bible, there is much instruction about what's next. There's some exhortations by Jesus that we should not be preoccupied with what's next because tomorrow has enough trouble on its own, that we should not take too much thought for tomorrow. In fact, Jesus instructed us, give us this day our daily bread. But even as I am enjoying my daily bread today, I should have a sense of possibilities and a sense of what is next. And the Bible talks about the idea of vision. Sometimes that is cast in the idea of revelation, that God has an unveiling that he wants to do in your life to show you a better you and show you a better sense and sets of possibilities for your life. And one of my favorite passages of Scripture is found in Proverbs 29:18, where it says, where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. Where there is no vision, in the King James it says, the people perish. We will perish, either intellectually or emotionally, psychologically, we will perish if we don't have a sense of vision and a sense of revelation for where we are headed. Hal Lindsey is a famous teacher and writer that specialized in what we call eschatology in theology. It is the idea of the study of last things. And he had this very sage insight. He said, man can live about 40 days without food, about 3 days without water, about 8 minutes without air, but only for 1 second without hope. Even if we exist without hope and go to work without hope, even if we go to bed without hope and arise in the morning without hope, even if we stay married without hope and raise children with hope, without hope, we're not really living, we're existing. We cannot live but 1 second without hope. The end of hope is the end of us. The death of hope is really the true existential death of who we are. You are not put on this planet to simply exist. Indeed, you're not healthy if you're just existing or being faithful or just ambling your way through life. To live your best life, you have to have a sense of possibility of that which is ahead of you. There's a wonderful example in the Scriptures of a woman who's had a sense of possibility that most of us would marvel that with her backstory, how she can have such an acute sense of possibility. And in Christian circles, she is talked about frequently as the woman with the issue of blood. The woman with the issue of blood. Essentially, she had some gynecological problems that made her hemorrhage on the inside. She was losing blood constantly. She was weakening. Medical science was not what it is now in the first century. And this woman shows us a wonderful example of a sense of possibilities because she had a history of physical suffering and failed medical treatments. Let me show you what this says in Mark 5:24 through 34. It says, a large crowd followed and pressed around Jesus. And there's this woman here that I'm talking about who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. Most of us don't like to bleed for 12 seconds. This woman bled internally, gynecologically, for 12 years. And she had suffered a great deal. And this is a very paradoxical phraseology. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors. It had been enough to just say she had suffered a great deal. or it would have been enough to say that she had suffered a great deal under a doctor's care. But in this case, this woman had to be a woman of means because she suffered under the care of many doctors that had trouble diagnosing and treating and fixing her ailment that had her continue to bleed and bleed and bleed for years. And the Bible says she spent all of her money on that which did not work. She had spent all of the money she had on medical treatments, which shows she was not a poor woman. She was a woman of means. And what's worse, she had suffered under the care of many doctors. She had many things that did not work. She had spent all of her money, all of her wealth, on this treatment that had not had any impact whatsoever on her ailment. And what's worse is that it steadily grew worse. It says instead of getting better, she grew worse. And what I find so interesting about this woman is hemorrhaging on the inside constantly. She is no doubt anemic. She is weak. She is pale. She's listless. She probably barely has the energy to get up out of bed and to move about. And somehow, there are thousands of people crushing and thronging against Jesus. They're pressing up against Jesus. And this woman who is actively bleeding, she is anemic, she is weak and listless, but she finds a way to push her way through a crowd that had much better health than she. And she fought through this crowd with one thing in mind. It says when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd, which is no easy thing to do, even if you're a 300-pound man. And she wanted to touch his cloak because she thought to herself, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. You know, I was raised in the church, and I think the King James says, if I could just touch the hem of his garment. It is a very romantic idea that there's more medicine in the hem of Jesus' garment than in all of the drugstores and apothecaries across the land, is what preachers used to say when I was a boy growing up. She just wanted to touch Jesus' garment. Even if I can't touch him, even if I can't have a conversation, even if I can't interact with Jesus and have a personal encounter with him, if I could just touch his clothing, that will be enough for me and I will be healed. And you want to know something? Her sense of possibility turned into just that, not only possibility, but a realization of healing. She had suffered under the care of many doctors, but then when she comes into contact with Jesus, she is instantaneously healed. It says immediately her bleeding stopped on the inside. She felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. She could feel the immediate difference. There's an absolutely unequivocal miracle that is happening. And at once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him, and he turned around in this crowd of thousands, this cast of thousands, and he asked an odd question: who touched my clothes? Who touched my clothes? And he says, the disciples say, you see the people crowding against you, and yet you ask who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the truth, what she had been thinking in her heart. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. You know, you could declare that to yourself today, that your faith can heal you. Your sense of possibility. I got to believe that this woman with this issue of blood had a sense of destiny and a sense of possibility. It was literally her sense of destiny and possibility that set the stage for her healing. Now, I am not just saying that it was a word of faith. I'm not trying to say that she kind of magically healed herself But I'm saying that her positive attitude, her sense of possibilities set the stage for a miracle. And that is that the power of God would intervene, that when she was in control of what she could control, which was her attitude and her sense of anticipation of possibilities, God did for her what she could not control, and that is he healed her. Your faith has healed you. Notice that he didn't say, I hereby heal you and lay hands on you. But he says, your faith has healed you. Another way of putting that, your sense of possibility, your sense of anticipation of something better has healed you. And Jesus gives the charge, go in peace now and be freed from your suffering. Emotionally healthy people don't allow their past experiences to hinder their future possibilities. This woman had bled for 12 years. She had spent all of her money. Now she doesn't have near the money that she used to have. We don't even know that she has a source of wealth that will kick in and give her more money. She has suffered under the care of many doctors. Everything that she tried didn't work. And not only did it not work, her condition got worse. It grew worse. I want you to know a closed door is sometimes the setup for a new opportunity. I don't know about you, but in my life, closed doors, things that seem importune, things that have not happened for me that I wanted to happen, was actually God's way of setting the stage for a miracle, to do for me what I could not have anticipated. Your faith has healed you. Now you can go in peace and be freed from your suffering. I have a question for you. How have your past traumas and your past negative experiences shaped your sense of possibility? How have your past traumas and past negative experiences shaped your sense of possibilities? Have you given up on possibility because of these negative experiences? Another question for you. What do you need to press through in order to have an encounter with Jesus? What is it that is blocking you from accessing all of the healing virtue, accessing your miracle, accessing your possibilities? What is it that you have to press through? This anemic woman, who no doubt was gaunt, she was frail, she was pale, she was wasting away, she's dying actively. But even in the midst of the throes of death, she says, if I could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, if I could just touch his clothes, I'll be made well, I'll be healed. The same thing is true of you, my friend, that if you press through whatever is hindering you, whatever is in your way, if you overcome past traumas and past negative experiences, I have no doubt that God has a miracle for you. God has fresh possibilities, even in the midst of your great extremity. Thank you so much for joining me.